And then whoever is running us can see who the participants are. Yeah, so the mayor is on as an attendee.
Right.
And he was trying to join. All right.
Just promoted the mayor to panelist status.
Great.
Okay, so we're talking about whether or not we need special meetings to discuss grant opportunities and get organized around that process, or whether we need a committee, or whether there's a single person who's the liaison with between this committee and Nancy on grants. I'm not really sure because it's very interdepartmental. The grants apply to different departments and different types of projects from A to Z. And so, I mean, I guess, John Eric, can you elaborate a little bit more on what you think this should look like?
And then there's ARPA funding too, right?
Right.
I think the department heads need to be primarily the lead on a coordination for those big capital projects, right? Where we're going after funds. They need to be the primary liaison to a group like that, discussing with the mayor's office, right? We obviously need to have better coordination within departments and assistance with boards and committees to look for the grants, advocate for them, and so forth. But these things move so quickly and change so frequently that I think trying to do that through a committee that is not city staff that are available sort of 9 to 5, hours might be difficult to get coordination on, because they just happen, the parameters are constantly moving and changing.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. The only thing I have to offer as far as Julia's question is, from what I see from my perspective, is the water division, we have a ton of projects coming down the pipe. Sewer, we have a few. There's always stuff with highway, sidewalks and roads and stuff like that. Yeah, so Andrew, before you jump in, I was just explaining that you and I were talking about trying to find a way to coordinate all the grants, and that's where we're at now. That's all. I don't have an answer. No one has an answer. Do you have an answer?
I actually don't know the question. So
you and I talked briefly when I was giving you an update on the water, and we talked about coming up with a way to, have more people involved with the decision of going after grants, because Nancy, the poor lady, can't, I shouldn't say can't, but it isn't tasked with contacting everybody about grants. She's doing the best she can to put the grant together. But there's so much infrastructure out there that even if it's only short-lived and we do this coordination effort for the next couple of years, the more we have design-ready projects that are designed, ready to go out, we'll be in a better place to go after grants.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's what I'll say to that is what Kim and I are trying to do now. Kim, with the capital facilities needs plan that she's putting together, is try to get an idea of what are all those projects that are out there. And John Eric, our meeting was extremely helpful for just getting a sense and trying to wrap our arms around everything. And this is also dovetailing nicely with the project that we're doing to try to figure out what ARPA funding is going to look like and what those monies will be spent toward, which is just putting together the big list of all the infrastructure projects and start working on prioritizing those and figuring out what money can pay for what when. And that'll be useful as well for the bipartisan infrastructure bill, because there'll be additional funding opportunities that come out after that. So we're trying to just figure out what's everything, how do we prioritize those, and then what needs to happen in order to spend those monies. And I think, John Eric, that's a really good point, is how many of those need to be shovel ready in order to move on them. So if we can start getting some of those funds out for design, that makes a lot of sense. So I think we're still just trying to wrap our arms around everything and figure out, what is the list of all the projects. So I think if you have anything for that list, send that to me and I'll make sure that it's on either Kim's list or Tony Fernari is putting together a list of all the infrastructure projects that could be potential ARPA spending opportunities. So does that sound right, Mayor?
Yeah, that's just what I was going to say. We're going through this exercise through Tony too. So, I mean, it's just a good time to have all these prioritized and then get the one shovel ready so we can go after these dollars when we have a better sense of what they look like.
That sounds like music to my ears, as we've been trying to get our heads around that as well. So that's fantastic. I think there's another layer that we were sort of addressing before you were able to hop on, and that is when grants present themselves and coordinating that effort. So that things don't fall through the cracks. And so what is our role from this committee in terms of helping to coordinate that? And I understand, I take the point completely that this is a staff-driven effort. It doesn't necessarily have to be us volunteers doing that, but just with the process, with the expressions of interest for the MVP, upcoming MVP grant, they all got in, but I could just, there was a lot going on and nothing fell through the cracks, which was awesome. But it was a little bit frantic at the end, not criticizing anyone, but just sort of avoiding that process as grant opportunities come up. So we're sort of on top of it a bit earlier.
Well, I think it would be good. I mean, Julia certainly could be a liaison for the committee and sort of, with the insert and the sort of staff side of that, right? As the staff to the Resiliency Committee. But I also think things like letters of support and whatnot, I mean, those are things that the committee can help out with, expediting, getting, those ready as needed for any grants that are related to resiliency.
That's a great point, Andy. Thank you.
Yeah.
And not just from the committee, but also other stakeholders that might help to bolster the application. I mean, that's one thing that Nancy has to spend a lot of time chasing around on, and that's something we could save her time on.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Good point.
Okay. So
Andrew, is Nancy on the ARPA committee as well?
She's not. So the ARPA committee, we're not treating as really a grant opportunity.
Right.
So she's not on that right now. That's more of just money that we already have and have to figure out how to spend. So she's not on that, but if there's anything that you feel like she knows that needs to be passed on to us, then we can definitely talk to her.
Okay.
We want to make sure that the information is flowing in the right direction.
Yes, exactly.
And all of
That's exactly right.
that we're sharing. That's I think one of the biggest roles of this group is just make sure that anything you see out there, even if you think, oh, they must already have that, send it anyway. Just we need to make sure that any opportunity we're getting and we're finding a way to move on.
Yeah. So like typically when I get,
sorry, I was thinking, it sounds like you've put your hand up to be the person that would receive that from committee, that information from committee members, and you would forward it.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
I was thinking Julia, on behalf of our committee, would be the coordinator for that. So she would be the point person. Does that sound?
Yeah, so let's just sort of outline this process a little bit more clearly. So right now we don't really have a process where if a grant becomes available, we talk to each other at a meeting or we email around and say, hey, what do we want to do about this? We want to apply for this or that or the other thing. And it's a little haphazard and there's no real roles or responsibilities, but we got it done for the last one, which was great. Typically someone gets an email, says there's a grant opportunity, there's a deadline coming up. It looks like it might apply to some work that might be really useful for the city. We send that to, so let's outline a process. That then gets sent to the whole Resiliency Committee and Nancy as a CC and the mayor's office as a CC. And we say, hey, should we utilize this grant opportunity to apply for one of our priority projects? And then we discuss it. Do we have a subcommittee that discusses it and makes a decision? Sometimes John Eric will say, well, we're already applying for a different grant for that one. So this one doesn't necessarily apply. We can leave it alone. I guess that's how it goes right now. How do we want to modify that in terms of steps and process?
I have a suggestion, if a way for others to start, but I have an idea. Okay, so what if we just created a distribution list on email with the appropriate department heads? Or just the appropriate people, doesn't have to be department head. So Julia, you represent resiliency. I'll represent anything that I got my hands on for engineering. You got Tony for DPS, Jamie for his part of DPS, Andy Port for planning. Andy and Jordy will be together for their planning, Molly, and so on and so forth. What if we just created a distribution list group for email? And when there's a proposed grant, people will be required to, when they receive the email, be required to say, hey, sounds good to me. I am not going after this grant, but it's a great idea. I have suggestions for this. We did it 2 years ago. Boom, boom, boom. This is my advice. Something like that.
Can I interrupt for a second? Can you check the attendees? Because Rishi's in there, and I don't know if Maria Parenti is a new member or not.
Yeah.
Just promoted them.
Okay, you got that, Andy?
How does John
Oh,
Eric's suggestion sound?
David Moon. I like it. I think if everyone is everyone on that identified distribution list is required to respond to the request for input on a specific grant as to, yes, I have a project for this. No, I don't. And if yes, then like, what is it? How do we want to move forward? I think that's a great idea. And maybe a couple people have an idea for the same grant, and then we hash that out and decide which one to go for. We can work with Nancy on that in the mayor's office.
I would just add, just asking Nancy her preference if she wants to be in on those early emails, or if she'd rather be asked directly once there's some kind of decision made, just so she's not overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not me. That's her.
I actually sort of think Nancy should be in on that because sometimes she's the one who gets the grant notifications, and we don't get them. Yeah.
And she's really good about responding when she's not here too.
Yeah.
But Julia, you're still the lead on this, right?
Or the Resiliency Committee, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
All right, great. Moving on. I'd like to sort of back up a bit because I have not met Andrew Levine, and Kim, I think, we've met in other areas of the city, but I don't know if you know us all. I assume you know us as staff, but there's us volunteers, and so I thought we could go around each of the volunteers and just very briefly a sentence or two say hi, if that sounds good. Brett, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Brett LaFay, volunteer here. I joined up last springtime, and recently just been focusing mostly on trying to organize a website here and have some comments about that in a little bit.
Sarah?
Sure, yep. I'm another volunteer. Sarah Tappan, joined about the same time as Brett. I've been working on the communication committee, doing slide decks, and I'm also involved in Storm Surge. So some of their speaker series this year will be covering topics associated with resiliency.
Joe?
Yeah, I am Joe Teixeira, the Conservation Commission Chair. I've been on the Resiliency Committee pretty much from the beginning, and helped with the write-up for the resiliency plan.
You're a long timer. And is Rishi on here? I don't see.
He is.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi.
Hi, how is everyone? So my name is Rishi Nandy. I'm an architect, and I am just been working resiliency issues for a long time. I'm RELI certified, which is a resiliency standard that we're using for the built environment. Plus, I'm Cal OES certified, so anything that comes down to like disaster assessments, things along those lines. There's a lot of background in it.
Thanks. And I'm Jane. I'm chairing the committee. I'm urban planner by training, and a long time interest and involvement in climate change issues. So it's been a pleasure. Most of us, except for Joe, have actually joined last spring, I think. So we haven't been in the committee for that long. I've been chairing it since, I think, September. So steep learning curve, but I think we've got a great crew here. Anything else on that? Any intros? Anything else anyone would like to say before we move on back to the updates?
No, I think we're good.
Everyone's good. I got, let's see. Julia, do you know for the hazard mitigation plan, do you know, is there a rep at or a person at MVPC that's going to be leading that listening session once we do submit the plan? Do we have a contact there?
That is a good question. We do have a new contact there. I'd have to look up his email because I haven't communicated with him other than getting the invoice for the work that Jennifer did, which we processed. She finished the plan. I was sort of assuming that actually we don't need anyone from MVPC anymore, that we could sort of terminate that work with them unless you feel it's necessary for the listening session, because this next listening session is really to get input from the stakeholders who we invited to the planning session. We know who those folks are. We can provide them with a copy of the draft hazard mitigation plan ahead of time, and then we can run through it, ask for comments, you know, questions and suggestions and that kind of thing. We take that input, incorporate anything necessary into the draft, send it to MEMA, get it back from MEMA with their comments and changes and edits. We make those, and then we send it to FEMA, get back from FEMA, and it goes to, no, I'm sorry, then it goes to the city council. We get it back from the city council with their approval, and then it can go to FEMA. So I don't know if you all think we should bring back MVPC to guide those sessions. There would be 2 additional sessions, one with the council, one just with the stakeholders. We could do that. They could run the slideshow. She could do like she did before, the sort of those straw polls that she had, those online polls.
Yeah, and I think they sometimes bring in some of the contiguous communities, correct? Yeah. So I think that's important.
Yeah. So I can get back in touch with MVPC and have them finish this off with us in that way, if you all think that we should.
As long as it doesn't delay the process, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Thank you. Let's see. Andy, we didn't get written updates from you. Do you have anything to update us on for the central, the waterfront bulkhead or waterfront park or waterfront west?
No, other than that we continue to try to get the funding necessary for the bulkhead project, and the Market Landing Park project is continuing with the design process. John Eric is helping us with trying to convey some water from Market Square down to the river so that future flooding there isn't a problem, but no new updates per se. We're still expecting to raise the wall when the funding is there for construction. If we have to phase it, so be it, but raising the wall for resiliency. So I wouldn't say there's anything new there that you don't already know.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else with any questions, concerns regarding the updates? Excellent. Let's see, next up was, we covered it, the grant coordination. And so new business, Molly, I know you've had some conversations internally with other folks that are here about a new city council liaison of that process. Do you have an update for that?
Yeah, yes, the mayor and I met about that today, and Andrew and I have spoken about it as well. So Barry Connell, who was on our committee as a city councilor, has expressed an interest in being on the committee again, not as councilor, but as a member. So we've discussed that possibility, and then that also brought up the fact that we don't have a city council representative. So Jane and I quickly spoke, and I've only mentioned it to the mayor, that does it make sense to have someone from the Planning and Development Committee of City Council have a representative from that committee be on this committee. So we thought we would just see if anyone had any thoughts about that. So those committee members, I believe, are Ed Cameron as chair, Connie Preston, and Christine Wallace. And the mayor said he'd be happy to speak with Councilor Cameron to see if he had an interest in doing that, or if there was someone on the committee. But does anyone have any other thoughts on anyone else or a different committee?
The only other thought is Mark Wright. It's attended the last 3 committee meetings as an attendee. So I don't know if that is an indication of interest, or, but somebody might want to check with him.
Right. He's on budget and finance if we're looking at, committee appointments. Okay.
I do think it's important to have someone from the council on our committee, though.
Yes.
For multiple reasons. So
I agree.
Very good idea.
And of course, I don't know what Barry says, he would be a liaison, but he's not officially on the council. So I don't think that makes any sense for him to play any official role.
My 2 cents on that, I guess, is just from experience. Ed might have difficulty trying to find the time for another committee, but if that is, either way, if that is the case, perhaps talking to the other 2 councilors, Councilor Preston and Councilor Wallace from that committee. At the end of the day, I think what matters most probably is understanding and support from someone on the council or from that committee in particular, potentially for sponsorship of things that might need to be brought forward. So
exactly.
Yeah, that was our thought process as well.
Right.
So
okay, so should we have the mayor speak with Ed and see what his thoughts are from his committee?
Sure.
I would like that.
Okay.
That sounds all right.
All right. So I'll follow up on that with him.
Thank you, Molly.
Mhm.
The city website overhaul, Brett, I had to delay your update on that. Where we are now as a committee in terms of looking at a website, it's part of a communications plan, improving a communications plan, and we've gone back and forth. You know, do we set up our own site? Do we go off the city, use the city's website? And so now it sounds like there's an overhaul happening for the city's website, which is very welcome, I think, on behalf of all of us. And so just trying to figure out where our current work fits into that. Brett, did you have any specific concerns? And then maybe we can get an update on.
Well, can I just interject there for a moment? Sorry, just to prepare our discussions that we've had here on the committee and then discussions we've had internally at City Hall, at least thus far that I've been participating in. There is obviously an effort to update the website, and it goes back to a question that I had raised previously, which is, well, I do love the idea of having a new URL or something that specifically includes resiliency in it. It sort of begs that question as we look at the main city website, and then we have other ones like the police department, youth services, parks, et cetera. Is there some benefit in consolidating and having one landing spot that people go to, and then they go to their division of the city, versus having a bunch of different websites? And to me, it begs that question: are we doing something? Are we bringing something that's still less efficient into the scenario here for everybody involved by having another website? It's just, to me, just a sort of administrative thing for a municipality. It doesn't seem manageable given the things that I have seen over the years with ability to manage different websites, coordinating them and so forth. As much as I love the idea, it makes me wonder, does it really make sense to do that here versus just having it be a subset of the city's website? And I defer to the mayor and Andrew on that sort of thing, but to me, that question comes up as we think about how many websites the city has.
Oh, and I think that we'd agree, Andy, especially because now that we know that there is going to be changes, there's changes happening to the city's website. I guess our question is what that process is in terms of the format, or so even the capabilities of each website. I'm not a tech person, so I'm making a mess of this. But so we have a list of things that we would like to do in terms of effective communication on behalf of the Resiliency Committee. And will the new city website be able to do that or not? And sort of learning, as we go, because it sounds like nothing has been finalized.
Yeah. Well, he just put out an email. The mayor just put out an email earlier this week or late last week about putting this team together to kind of look at the website and figure out what changes could be made. So perhaps if we have a list of all the things that we think are important to resiliency to have, and then bring that to that committee that I think he's forming right now. And it sounds like Andrew might be heading that up, but I don't see Andrew. There he is. Is that true, Andrew? Are you heading up that little effort? A big effort?
It's a big effort, I think.
It's a big effort. Yeah. I'm happy to be the point of contact for now. I believe that's the plan, and the mayor can correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, so the biggest plan is to change the design and to make everything look more user-friendly and add the functionality we want. You've got some good resources on the site right now, but I think it's time to do an overhaul of the content as well, and just make everything as user-friendly and easy to find as possible. So just if you want to, as a group, figure out what content you want on there, what functionality you're looking for, if there's anything different, come up with all of that. And I think it should be easy to integrate. Is there anything that you definitely know that you want that like the current site doesn't really do for you?
Well, if I could comment on that, the things that we've seen, certainly I have seen, are it might be helpful for committee members to be able to participate, those who have some experience or train a little bit, to have the ability to do some updates on the website, because one of the things that I have certainly seen is that with the volunteer committees or the ones that don't have primary staffing, having the ability for committee members who maybe have some experience with website updates, given that it's all template driven largely, to be able to update those things might speed up the frequency with which things are updated. I think certainly that's what I've seen on the city side, and we have lag behind with updates because there just isn't enough staff time to keep up with all the pages and divisions.
Yep, that's fine. That's a good thing to flag, that you want more users to be able to upload. Yep, makes sense.
Yeah.
Can Can I ask a question? What's the scope of the changes that you're planning on make? Are you going away from Drupal and Civic Plus?
Well, I think
Right
they're still
now,
assessing
that's
that,
not-
right?
You're going to assess that? I mean, you can say something about discarding the whole thing and rebuilding it from scratch. Is that true?
No, that's not the intention at the moment.
So you pitch. So then what is you're looking to what, extend it out, rewrite all the existing pages, or?
I think the mayor's office is trying to figure out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we good? All right. So what we're looking to do right now is to find out what functionality people are looking for. The preference is not to change from the Civic Plus platform that we have right now, but we haven't decided on anything yet because we're still trying to find out what it is that people need to do.
Yeah, and Brett, just for the committee as well, I mean, we have the ability, actually, as Andrew mentioned earlier, there is some functionality, for instance, on getting newsletters or whatnot out to folks that are subscribing to a certain list, basically a listserv. So it's not as if that functionality isn't necessarily there even today. Yeah, I think it's more about taking advantage of that, who's doing it, and so forth. And so there's more functionality. I think, the mayor's office is right. The website does need an upgrade to make it more user-friendly for the public, as well as for the staff that update, because some of the updates we do have these idiosyncrasies we have to deal with to get things updated. And so we have staff that have just done workarounds, but I think that process will be more efficient. The website will be more user-friendly, but I guess I'm not necessarily convinced that the functionality we have today or that we're going to have going forward isn't something that will satisfy everybody's needs. I mean, we have the ability to post documents, we have the ability to update information on committee members, to do newsletters out to folks that might be subscribing to certain categories. They have the ability even now to check off certain boxes, so they could say check off Resiliency Committee if it's there. Resiliency Matters, and
Thanks, Andy. So it sounds like next steps are for the communication subgroup to get Andrew a list of what we have been thinking of in terms of functionality, compare notes, and it sounds like it could be a pretty good match.
Yeah, exactly.
So why don't we do that? And Andrew, do you have a timeline when you would prefer to receive that information?
No timeline has been announced yet, but if you want to do in the next 2 weeks, it should be great. Even take 3, that's fine.
I bet we can do 2, but we'll take 3. All right. Thank you. And the last thing I had, other than just a couple of quick announcements of just webinars, is there's an event at the high school involving several environmentally related groups this Thursday, or actually tomorrow. And I know that this committee, I think I've seen emails from last winter, and there were a few mentions of it in the minutes from last spring, that there was an intention of bringing in high school students, or at least a few, to attend our meetings and sort of get them involved. And I'm going to attend that event with Molly tomorrow, and I didn't know what I wanted to offer up in terms of potential involvement. I think it'd be fantastic to get high school students involved. But maybe just attending meetings and not necessarily, giving them tasks, because I don't know who would provide that oversight. I just didn't know our experience in the past, if students have been involved and how that went, and what folks are comfortable with. I know this is last minute, but just any quick thoughts would be helpful.
I mean, I think we've worked with students before in various realms, but if you get the right student, they can be really great to work with, and the right tasks. So maybe helping with website features, or coming up with usability, things like that. But if we can come up with something like that, depending on who we get to, so we'll be there tomorrow, and people can come sign up if they're interested, and we'll see who that is and what their interests are, and maybe what they're passionate about, or what they spend their non-school time doing, or what they want to learn about.
Well, that sounds good to me. And I assume there were nobody was going, no, but I just wanted to know, if there have been previous conversations and how they went. So if that, why don't we just roll with it and see what we get? That works for everyone. Excellent. I think that's pretty much up. That's it for me. Tonight, there's a webinar, FEMA's Region 1 Coastal Erosion Hazard Areas Study. If anyone's interested and didn't get that email, I can forward that to you. John, Eric, I think you were there, or Joe. we sent that out a while ago, but it's from 6:30 to 8 tonight. So I'm going to try to attend at least some of that. Hopefully they have a recording if I'm not able to watch the whole thing. Next meeting is March 16th, 3 o'clock.
I have one request, Jane.
Yeah.
Can you go back to a discussion on the regs? Who's working on the regs specifically for the questionnaire? And can someone just give our group a new update on that?
Sure. So it's Andy, Julia, Joe, myself, and Rick Tainer, who's on the planning board. And we are looking at potential updates and language for a site plan review in terms of a lot of stormwater management, the tree canopy stuff, not necessarily looking at floodplain yet. That would be addressed in a questionnaire that would be for project applicants, asking about various different climate change issues. We're in the process of drafting everything, so I don't have a significant update from last time.
Anything about anyone working on zoning and that type of thing for overlay districts?
Not yet.
That's on the list, John Eric. We decided to go after what we're calling the low hanging fruit right now, which is really just updating the sort of special permit provisions for like low impact development and things like that. So based on a lot of what Portsmouth is already doing, that's why Rick has been super helpful. And then we've looked at places like New York and other locations that have these checklists that applicants have to fill out whenever they submit a permit application. And I think Boston, Cambridge, especially Boston, I think in New York are the ones we're looking at. They have to answer all these questions, check the box. Have you looked at energy efficiency? What have you incorporated into your project application for energy efficiency? Have you looked at sea level rise? What sorts of modifications have you made associated with that? And they check off these boxes so that, and they also sometimes have to submit a narrative explanation so that when the project application comes in, the reviewers can see exactly how they've addressed climate change very clearly.
I would supplement what Julia said there. On the zoning end, this is a site plan approval from the planning board, conservation commission approval, right? Can cite some of these same standards, same expectations. Some of them are specific expectations, but some of them are more generalized. The applicant has to provide a narrative to explain what's going on there. As opposed to meeting and X standards specifically. But one of the things to John Eric's point, I think this is actually probably important for the mayor and Andrew, is we've talked about having on the city's website where we currently have the MyMap page that shows GIS and the city's parcels and particularly the zoning districts and flood zones, to have a parallel page that is not the current regulation, but helps to show the future sea level rise issue, right? And I think per some discussion this committee's had before, trying to come forward with a new zoning district that addresses sea level rise or things like that is a much bigger challenge, or much bigger, like Julie said earlier, this is the low hanging fruit, things that are pretty, less controversial, low impact development techniques on projects that may help with resiliency. But rather than thinking about a large scale change like that to the regulatory process, making sure that the public is well informed about those risks that are coming along in the future by using that page. And the assumption, I think thus far, at least that I've had, is that the resiliency brochure or our future references and outreach will be able to point people to that page where they can see for themselves what the future projection is expected to be, which I think should then make at least the job at least partially easier going forward for people to at least understand those issues. I think it's probably premature for us to be going ahead and doing that right now. Even drafting it right now, I think might be difficult. I think we need to focus on, like Julie said, the low hanging fruit. And that's my understanding is where we've all agreed to go over the next couple of years, focusing on the low hanging fruit first while we get more public education about the issues like sea level rise before expecting anybody on the council to change zoning, which would be difficult for them, I think, without that groundwork being done.
Exactly.
Yep. So when you're talking about stormwater, just don't forget to don't go too far, because we're in the middle of modifying our ordinance and copying other cities. It's not just get me involved.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be controlling. We're a title community, so we don't have to attenuate. So we don't have to comply with a lot of things that other areas have to comply with. So just don't go too far
Yeah.
with that. That's all.
Yeah, John Eric, it might be helpful for you to be kept in the loop on what the changes we're making and what we're doing, which isn't much so far.
We're meeting next, I think it's March 2nd, and hopefully we'll have a pretty good draft. So John Eric will bring you in after that.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm responsible for our ordinance and the rules and regs, and we modify it because of many requirements coming down from DEP and then EPA. And we're in the middle of one right now with EPA, and they bring in a little bit of resiliency, but they have other things they're bringing in. So we just have to be aware. I just want you to be aware of that.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement. We need to give some deference to you as a city engineer for the NIPD side of it, and also the stormwater ordinance that you implement. So, you know, with the site plan approvals that are routed around, I think the assumption here is that, well, obviously, like Julia said, we'll consult with you on the details, but I think the assumption here is that we're not going to have anything that's going to conflict with that. In essence, it might point people to try to do some of those techniques where it's appropriate, but recognizing that you as city engineer might, you know, be able to determine whether or not in that instance it makes sense to do it or not, and that the boards in reviewing it would then take that into account as opposed to somehow expecting something different than, say, your guidance is.
Yeah. Great, but thank you, John Eric, for bringing that up. We'll make sure that we coordinate. All right, anything else before we go?
Nope.
Sounds quiet and good then. All right. Well, thank you all.
Thanks, Jane.
Thanks,
See
Jane.
you all
Thanks.
around.
Yep. Till next time.
Take care.
Until next time, have a good night, everyone.
Thanks.
Right.
Take
Yeah.
care.